Beggar girl feeds paralyzed boy in hospital. Unknowingly the son of a millionaire. Emily held the spoon carefully, bringing another portion of oatmeal to the boy's slightly parted lips. Her brown eyes shone with concern as she watched his every movement, as if his life depended on that simple act of swallowing. "Come on, Ethan, just a little more," she whispered, her voice filled with a tenderness that contrasted with her worn-out clothes and bare feet, dangling from a chair, too. Tall for her. The boy with blonde hair and sky-blue eyes obediently opened his mouth, trusting the girl who had appeared in his life like a guardian angel. His little legs hadn't moved in months, but his heart still raced every time he saw Emily approach. His room. "Emily, you need to leave," the nurse's harsh voice echoed from the doorway. "I've told you before, children can't wander around the hospital." The girl didn't look up, continuing to feed Ethan with the patience of someone who had all the time in the world, even knowing she'd be thrown out again any moment. "He was hungry," she replied simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world for a street child to care for an abandoned patient. It was 3 weeks ago when Emily first found Ethan alone in that 7th-floor room. She had climbed the stairs of Mercy General Hospital, searching for a warm place to spend the night, when she heard a faint cry from one of the rooms. Peeking through the slightly open door, she saw a little boy, not much younger than her, lying in a huge bed, softly weeping. No one seemed to care. Nurses hurried past, doctors only came in to check machines. The boy was clean, medicated, but utterly alone. And Emily, who knew the feeling of abandonment all too well, couldn't just walk away. At first, she just stood in the doorway, watching. Ethan noticed her and stopped crying, staring at her with curiosity. Emily waved timidly and he managed a small smile. That was enough for her to step closer. "Hi," she whispered, slowly approaching the bed. "My name's Emily. What's yours?" "Ethan," he answered weakly. "Are you going to leave too?" The question hit Emily like a punch to the stomach. This boy was used to people walking away. "I don't know," she admitted honestly, "but if I do, I promise I'll come back." And she did. The next day, the next week, and every day since then. She learned that Ethan had been in the hospital for 4 months, that his legs hadn't worked since an accident, and that a woman named Barbara used to care for him but had stopped coming 2 weeks earlier. Emily started small. She brought fruit. She managed to get from markets, told stories she made up on the spot, sang songs her mother used to sing before disappearing from her life. But when she realized Ethan could barely feed himself, she decided to truly help. She memorized the doctor's schedules, learned the nurses' routes, and discovered that between 2 and 4 in the afternoon, the 7th floor was quieter. That's when she'd sneak up, hide in the bathroom until she was sure no one was around, and then go to Ethan's room. Today, like always, she had brought a bowl of oatmeal from the hospital kitchen, convincing the cook it was for her hospitalized grandmother. A lie, of course, but a necessary one. "You're really brave," Ethan said after swallowing another spoonful. "Mom always said I was brave, but I think she was wrong." Emily paused, the spoon hovering in the air. "Where's your mom?" "So she went to heaven after the accident," Ethan replied with the calmness of someone who had accepted that painful truth. "Dad said she couldn't take care of me anymore." "And your dad?" Ethan looked away. "He's really busy. There's a big company, and many people need him. Aunt Barbara used to take care of me, but she left too." Emily felt her chest tighten. She knew abandonment well, but at least she had her freedom. Ethan was trapped in that bed, relying on the kindness of strangers who seemed to have forgotten him. "Well, now you have me," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "And I'm not going anywhere." It was then that the door swung open forcefully. The head nurse, Mrs. Henderson, walked in with her face red from anger. "Emily." "Wilson, how many times do I have to tell you that you can't be here?" Emily shrank in her chair but didn't let go of the bowl. "He was hungry." "That's not your problem. You're a child, and a street child at that. You're not qualified to take care of anyone." "But I take good care of him," Emily protested, feeling tears burn her eyes. "He eats when I bring him food, and he stops crying when I tell him stories. Get out of here now before I call security." Ethan tried to move in bed, his arms flailing weakly. No, let her stay, please. She's my friend. Mrs. Henderson ignored the boy completely. Emily, if I catch you here again, I'll call social services. You know what that means, don't you? Emily knew. It meant a shelter. It meant losing her freedom. It meant never being able to come back to take care of Ethan. She swallowed her tears and stood up from the chair. I'm sorry, she murmured, leaving the bowl on the bedside table. As she walked toward the door, she heard Ethan calling her name, but she didn't have the courage to look back. If she did, she wouldn't be able to leave, and that would only bring bigger trouble for both of them. Outside the hospital, Emily leaned against the cold wall and let the tears fall freely. She didn't understand why caring for someone could be considered wrong. She didn't understand why being poor made her less capable of helping. She didn't understand why the world was so cruel to those who needed love the most. But one thing she knew, she wouldn't give up on Ethan. She just needed to find a better way to reach him. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. That night, Emily slept under the awning of a shop near the hospital, planning her next move. She had noticed the nurses changed shifts at 6 in the morning. Maybe if she arrived really early, she could sneak in without being seen. What she didn't know was that, a few miles away in a mansion in the city's wealthiest neighborhood, Richard Harrison was having another sleepless night, tormented by guilt and the pain he tried to bury in his work. Richard was a 42-year-old man, the owner of one of the state's largest construction companies. He had built his empire from nothing, working since he was 15 to give his family the life he never had. When he married Catherine, he thought he had finally found complete happiness. Ethan was the cherry on top, the son they had always dreamed of having. But life has a cruel way of testing people. The accident that paralyzed Ethan and took Catherine happened on a rainy night as they were returning from a company party. Richard was driving. Catherine was in the front seat, laughing at something Ethan had said from the back. A moment of distraction, a truck losing control, and Richard's entire life crumbled. Catherine was gone that same night. Ethan survived, but was paralyzed from the waist down. And Richard, destroyed by guilt, couldn't even look at his son without seeing his own failure as a father and husband. He hired the best medical team, the best hospital, the best caregiver. He paid for everything, but he couldn't bring himself to be present. Every visit to the hospital was torture. Every glance from Ethan, a reminder of what she had lost. Because of him. Barbara, the caregiver, had been a temporary salvation, but 2 weeks ago she came to his office with a serious expression. Mr. Richard, I need to talk to you about Ethan. Is there a problem with his treatment? He asked without looking up from his papers. The problem is the boy is very sad. He asks why his father never visits, why he's always alone. I do my job, but I can't replace a family's love. Richard clenched his fist. I'm paying you to take care of him, not to give me parenting advice. With all due respect, sir, money doesn't cure loneliness. That boy needs his father. He needs medical care, which he's getting. The rest is none of your concern. Barbara sighed. Then I'm sorry to say I can no longer work for you. I can't keep watching a child waste away from sadness knowing I could do something about it. Richard finally looked up. Are you quitting? I'm trying to make you see reason, but if you won't listen, then yes, I'm leaving. I'll find another job where I can actually help people. And she walked out, leaving Richard alone with his anger and guilt. He tried hiring another caregiver, but everyone he found was either unsuitable or too expensive, even by his standards. Meanwhile, Ethan remained alone in the hospital, relying only on basic care from the medical staff. Richard knew he had to do something, but with each passing day, it seemed harder to make any decision. Work became his escape, and he spent up to 16 hours a day in the office, avoiding thoughts of his son wasting away in a hospital room. Meanwhile, the next morning, Emily managed to slip into the hospital, blending in with a group visiting other patients. She took the stairs slowly, checking each floor until she was sure it was safe to reach the 7th. When she arrived at Ethan's room, she found him awake, staring blankly at the ceiling. "Ethan," she whispered, and his little face lit up instantly. "Emily, you came back." "Of course I came back. I promised I wouldn't leave, remember? She approached the bed and noticed he looked thinner, paler. Did you eat today? Ethan shook his head. The nurse brought food, but I couldn't eat it. The spoons are too heavy and no one helps me. A hot wave of anger rose in Emily's chest. How could they let a child go hungry? It's okay, I'll get something from the kitchen. Be careful not to get caught, Ethan pleaded. I don't want you to get in trouble because of me. Don't worry about me, Emily said, though her heart ached. She knew each day it was riskier to return. This time, she convinced the cook to give her not just porridge but also some soup and bread. She lied, saying her little sister was hospitalized and couldn't eat on her own. Another necessary lie. When she returned to the room, she found Ethan asleep. She sat in the chair beside the bed, watching his peaceful face. It was hard to believe such a small boy could endure so much suffering. Gently, she woke him. Ethan, I brought warm food. He opened his eyes and smiled, that smile that always made Emily's heart swell with tenderness. How you're the best person in the world, Emily. Don't be silly, she said, though her cheeks warmed. As she fed him slowly, Ethan began telling her about his dreams. Last night, I dreamed we were running in the park together. We were chasing colorful kites flying in the sky. Emily smiled even as her heart broke. Ethan was only 5 and had already lost so much. Who knows? Maybe one day you'll run again. The doctors didn't say it was forever, did they? They said maybe with a lot of physical therapy and surgeries, I could get a little better. But Dad doesn't want to spend any more money on me, Emily stopped stirring the soup. What do you mean? I heard him talking to the doctor. He said it's not worth investing in treatments that might not work. Ethan's words hit Emily like a slap. She couldn't understand how a father could give up on his own child. Maybe you misunderstood. She tried to soften the blow, but inside she burned with indignation. No. Ethan shook his head sadly. I know when people don't want me anymore. Mom didn't want me anymore and went to heaven. Aunt Barbara didn't want me anymore and left. Dad doesn't want me anymore and stays away. Soon you won't want me either. That's not true. Emily held Ethan's small hand firmly. I'll never abandon you. Never. Promise? I promise. But even as she made the promise, Emily knew it was beyond her power to keep it. She was just a child herself. No family, no money, no power. How could she promise to protect someone when she could barely protect herself? After feeding Ethan and telling him a story about a brave princess who rescued wounded dragons, Emily said goodbye and walked down the hospital stairs with a heavy heart. She needed to find a real way to help Ethan, not just give him food and affection. He needed proper medical treatment. He needed his father. He needed a family who cared about him. As she left the hospital, Emily nearly bumped into an elegant woman carrying a leather briefcase, walking with purposeful steps. It was Dr. Jennifer Williams, a spinal injury specialist who had been called in to evaluate Ethan's case. The doctor had just examined the boy and was puzzled. According to the reports, Ethan should have been in worse condition after so long without proper physical therapy, but the boy seemed better than expected, especially emotionally. When she asked about it, Ethan talked about a girl named Emily who came to visit him. Jennifer frowned. There was no Emily on the list of authorized visitors. In fact, Ethan had no authorized visitors besides his father, who never showed up. Curious, she decided to investigate. She asked the nurses about this Emily. And that's when Mrs. Henderson told her about the troublemaker who kept sneaking into the hospital. A street kid, Henderson explained dismissively. Must be about 8 or 9. She bothers the patients, especially the boy in 507. I've kicked her out several times, but she always comes back. Jennifer grew thoughtful. The fact that Ethan had improved emotionally since this girl started visiting him wasn't a coincidence. As a doctor, she knew psychological well-being directly affected physical recovery. What about the boy's father? When was the last time he visited? Since he got here 4 months ago, he's maybe come 3 times. Always quick, always in a hurry. Pays all the bills on time, but doesn't seem very interested in his son. Jennifer sighed. Sadly, this wasn't the first case she'd seen of parents struggling to care for children with disabilities. But this couldn't go on. Ethan was a child who deserved love and care, not just basic medical attention. That same afternoon, she decided to call Richard Harrison. "Mr. Harrison, this is Dr. Jennifer Williams. I've been overseeing your son Ethan's case. Is there a problem?" Richard's voice was tense and distant. "Actually, I'd like to schedule a meeting with you. There are some important matters about Ethan's treatment we need to discuss. Not today, not tomorrow. I'm closing a very important deal. Mr. Harrison, with all due respect, your son is more important than any deal." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Doctor, I'm paying for the best medical team in the city to take care of my son. If there's any problem with the treatment, handle it professionally." "The problem isn't medical, sir, it's human. Ethan needs his father. Ethan needs medical care, which he's receiving. Does he need anything else?" Jennifer clenched, her fists in frustration. "I need you to come to the hospital tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon. I'll be reviewing Ethan's treatment options, and your presence is mandatory." "I told you I can't." "Then perhaps we'll need to involve Child Protective Services." The threat hung in the air. Richard was silent for a long moment. 2 o'clock, he finally said, and hung up. Jennifer placed the phone back on the receiver and sighed. She didn't like using threats, but sometimes it was the only language some parents understood. Meanwhile, Emily had spent the entire afternoon thinking about Ethan and what he'd said about his father not wanting to spend more money on treatments. The idea that a child could be abandoned over financial matters left her both furious and heartbroken. She knew poverty well. She'd lived on the streets since she was 6, when her mother had simply vanished one day. She'd learned to fend for herself, to find food, shelter, and protect herself from the dangers of the streets. But she'd never imagined there were wealthy parents who also abandoned their children. That night, she came up with an idea. If Ethan's father didn't want to spend money on treatments, maybe she could find a way to get that money herself. She didn't know how, but she had to try. The next morning, Emily arrived at the hospital earlier than usual. She wanted to talk to Ethan about her idea, but she also wanted to observe how the hospital operated more closely. Maybe there was a way she could help officially, instead of having to sneak around. When she reached Ethan's room, she found him more excited than usual. "Emily, the new doctor said I might be able to do physical therapy again." "Really?" Emily's eyes sparkled with hope. "She's going to talk to my dad today. She said there are new treatments that could help me get better." For the first time in weeks, Emily felt a flicker of hope. Maybe things would work out for Ethan after all. "That's wonderful. You'll see. Soon you'll be running in the park for real." "You really think so?" "I'm sure of it." But Emily's hope didn't last long. At 2 in the afternoon, she was hiding in the hallway when she saw a tall man in an expensive suit and a stern expression walk toward Ethan's room. Instinctively, she knew it was the boy's father. Richard Harrison entered the room with the look of someone fulfilling an unpleasant obligation. He saw Ethan lying in bed, thinner than he remembered, and felt guilt tighten his chest again. "Hi, Dad," Ethan said timidly. "Hi, son. How are you?" "I'm okay. The doctor said you'd talk about my treatment." Richard nodded, avoiding direct eye contact with Ethan. Dr. Jennifer entered the room shortly after, carrying a folder of tests and reports. "Mr. Harrison, thank you for coming. Let's discuss Ethan's options." For the next half hour, Jennifer explained in detail about new treatments, intensive physical therapy, and possibilities for experimental surgeries. She talked about recovery chances, the importance of family support, and the need for hope. Richard listened silently, but his expression remained closed off. "And what's the cost of all this?" he finally asked. "The cost isn't what's important, Mr. Harrison. What matters is that Ethan has a real chance to improve significantly." "Doctor, give me numbers. How much does this entire treatment cost?" Jennifer hesitated. "Well, it would be a significant investment, perhaps between $80,000 and $100,000 spread over 2 years. Richard was silent for a long moment. Ethan watched his father with hopeful eyes. "No," Richard finally said. "I won't spend that money." The room fell, silent. Ethan felt his world crumbling again. "Dad?" Ethan, you need to understand, this money won't bring your mother back. It won't undo the accident. You have to accept your situation and make peace with it. Jennifer was shocked. Mr. Harrison, are you serious? Completely. I've already spent enough on treatments that lead nowhere. Ethan will stay here receiving the basic care the insurance covers until I decide what to do with him. Dad, please. Ethan's voice was a broken whisper. I promise I'll get better. I promise I'll recover. Richard couldn't bring himself to look at his son. He stood up from the chair and walked toward the door. The decision is final. And with that he left, leaving behind a shattered boy and a furious doctor. Emily, who had overheard everything from the hallway, felt a rage she'd never known before. How could a father be so cruel? How could he abandon his own son like that? She entered the room as soon as Richard left and found Ethan crying silently. Ethan, he doesn't love me anymore, Emily. My own father doesn't love me anymore. Emily moved closer to the bed and took Ethan's hand. That's not true. He's scared and grieving because of the accident. Sometimes adults do the wrong things when they're hurting. But now I'll never get better. I'll never be able to play again. Yes, you will, Emily said with a determination that surprised even herself. I'll find a way. How? I don't know yet, but I'll find a way, I promise. It was the second promise Emily had made to Ethan, and this time she knew it would be even harder to keep. But she couldn't let that boy give up on life. She couldn't let the cruelty of the world win. That night, Emily barely slept. She kept thinking of ways to get the money for Ethan's treatment. $80,000 was an impossible amount for her, but she had to try something. The next morning, she had a desperate idea. She'd seen reports on the electronics store's TV about fundraising campaigns for medical treatments. People started crowdfunding, asked for help online, rallied the community. But Emily didn't know how to do any of that. She didn't know how to use a computer, didn't have any documents, didn't have credibility. Who would believe a street kid? Then she remembered Dr. Jennifer. If she could convince the doctor to help, maybe there was a chance. Emily waited for the doctor to leave Mercy General Hospital at the end of her shift and approached her in the parking lot. Dr. Jennifer. Jennifer turned, surprised to see a girl running toward her. You must be Emily, she said, recognizing the description she'd heard from the nurses. Yes, ma'am. I need to talk to you about Ethan. Jennifer looked around. The parking lot was empty and she could see the girl was nervous. All right, Emily, let's talk in my car. Inside the car, Emily told her everything. She spoke about how she'd met Ethan, how she'd cared for him, about the promise she'd made. She told her own story, about living on the streets, about knowing what it was like to be abandoned. Doctor, can't you help Ethan get the money for his treatment? Jennifer sighed. Emily, I wish I could help, but I don't have that kind of money. And even if I did, his father would have to authorize any treatment. But if we got the money, would he agree? I don't know. Mr. Harrison's problem doesn't seem to be just financial. He's not handling his son's situation well. Emily was quiet for a moment. Then we have to show him Ethan is worth it. How? I don't know yet. But there has to be a way. Jennifer looked at that thin girl in worn-out clothes, but with determined eyes, and felt something stir in her chest. There was a strength there, a courage that touched her deeply. Emily, can I ask you something? Why do you care so much about Ethan? You barely know each other. Emily thought about the question for a long moment. Because no one else does. And everyone should have at least one person who cares. The answer was so simple yet so profound that Jennifer felt her eyes well up. All right, she finally said. I'll help you. I don't know how yet, but we'll find a way to help Ethan. Emily smiled for the first time in days. Promise? I promise. And so began an unlikely alliance between a street kid and a renowned doctor, united by their determination to save a boy his own father had abandoned. But they didn't know the fight had only just begun and that many others would try to stop them from fulfilling their mission. The following week, Jennifer began researching ways to secure funding for Ethan's treatment. She knew of a few organizations that help children with disabilities, but all required parental consent, and a series of documents Richard would certainly never provide. Meanwhile, Emily kept visiting Ethan daily, always careful not to get caught. But it was getting harder. Mrs. Henderson had instructed the entire staff to keep an eye out for her, and more than once Emily had to hide in bathrooms or empty rooms to avoid being seen. Ethan, in turn, grew more depressed by the day. The conversation with his father had shattered what little hope he had left, and not even Emily's presence could fully lift his spirits. "Emily," he said one particularly difficult afternoon, "maybe it's better if you don't come anymore." "Why?" She stopped mid-story, the one she'd been making up. "Because you'll end up in trouble because of me, and I don't deserve that." "Of course you do." "I don't." Ethan shook his head sadly. "If my own father doesn't think I deserve treatment, why would you?" Emily's heart clenched. "Ethan, listen, your father is wrong, very wrong. You deserve to be loved, to be cared for, to have a chance to get better, and I'm going to make that happen." "How?" "Dr. Jennifer is helping me. We'll find a way." Ethan looked at her with a mix of hope and disbelief. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." But inside, Emily was far from confident. Each passing day without a concrete solution left her more desperate, and the pressure from the hospital was mounting. It was on Thursday of that week when things truly started to unravel. Emily was in Ethan's room, helping him eat, when Mrs. Henderson walked in with a man in a suit she didn't recognize. "There she is," said Mrs. Henderson, pointing at Emily. "That's the girl who keeps disturbing our patients." The man stepped forward with a serious expression. "Are you Emily Wilson?" "Yes, sir," she answered, trying not to show her fear. "I'm Michael Parker, a social worker. We've received multiple complaints about you roaming the hospital without authorization. You'll need to come with me." "I didn't do anything wrong," Emily protested. "I was just taking care of Ethan." "Emily, you're a minor with no legal guardian, and you're disrupting a hospital environment. This is very serious." Ethan tried to sit up in bed. "Please, don't take her. She was just helping me." The social worker ignored Ethan completely. "Emily, you need to come with me now. We'll discuss your situation." Emily looked at Ethan, saw the despair in his eyes, and made an impulsive decision. She ran. She knew the hospital corridors well after weeks of observing schedules and routes. She ran down the stairs, reached the ground floor, and slipped out the back door before anyone could catch her. But she knew this wouldn't solve anything. Now they had her full name, knew she had no legal guardian. They would come looking for her, and when they found her, she'd be taken to a shelter. And Ethan would be left completely alone. That night, hidden beneath a bridge, Emily cried as she hadn't in years. She felt powerless, frustrated, defeated. She had promised Ethan she wouldn't abandon him, but now she couldn't see how to keep that promise. Then she remembered something. Dr. Jennifer had given her phone number in case of an emergency. Emily didn't have a cell phone, but she knew where a working payphone was. At 7 in the morning, she called Jennifer. "Doctor? It's Emily. I need your help." "Emily, where are you? I heard the social worker went to the hospital yesterday. I'm hiding. They want to take me to a shelter." "Emily, maybe that's what's best for you. You're a child. You need care, school." "No." Emily's voice came out louder than she intended. "If they take me, I'll never be able to help Ethan again, and he'll be alone all over." Jennifer sighed on the other end of the line. "What do you want me to do?" "Help me get the money for his treatment. If we can, maybe his father will change his mind." "Emily, I've already tried several organizations. They all require parental consent. Then we need to find another way." There was a long pause. "There is one thing," Jennifer said hesitantly, "but it's risky." "What?" "I know a journalist who covers stories about social causes. If we could get him to do a piece on Ethan, maybe we could move enough people to start a fundraising campaign. But wouldn't his father be furious? He probably would be, and it's risky for you too. The social worker and the hospital would find out where you are." Emily didn't hesitate. "I don't care. If it can help Ethan, I want to try." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." "All right, I'll call him today. Where can we meet?" Emily thought quickly. "The square in front of the hospital at 2 in the afternoon." "Okay." "Emily?" "Yes." "Be careful. There are a lot of people who'll try to stop you." "I know, but I won't give up." As she hung up, Emily felt a mix of fear and hope. She knew she was risking her own freedom, but if there was even a chance to help Ethan, she had to try. What she didn't know was that her phone call had been overheard by someone who worked for the phone company, someone with ties to social services. Within hours, Michael Parker knew exactly where Emily would be at 2 that afternoon. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Ethan was having the worst day since Emily started visiting him. No one had explained what happened. They only told him Emily couldn't visit anymore. He was convinced she had decided to leave him too. Dr. Jennifer tried to comfort him during her morning rounds, but without being able to explain the truth, there was little she could do. "Dr. Jennifer," Ethan said weakly, "everyone leaves in the end, don't they?" "No, Ethan, there are people who truly care about you, like Emily." "Yes, like Emily, but she didn't come back. Sometimes people have to stay away for a while, but that doesn't mean they've stopped caring." Ethan didn't look convinced. "I think I'll be alone forever." The boy's words broke Jennifer's heart. She knew she had to do something drastic, even if it cost her career. At 2 in the afternoon, Emily arrived at the square in front of the hospital. She had taken extra care not to be seen, wearing different clothes she'd gotten from a church donation and tying her hair in a new way. Jennifer was already waiting, accompanied by a man around 40 years old with graying hair and a serious expression. "Emily, this is Robert Thompson, the journalist I told you about." Robert looked at Emily with curiosity. He had covered many stories over the years, but rarely encountered such an unusual situation. "Emily, Dr. Jennifer told me your story. What you're doing for Ethan is remarkable. I just want him to be okay," Emily replied simply. "I understand. I'll write an article about the case, but you need to know this will draw a lot of attention. People will want to meet you, including social services." "I know, but if it helps Ethan, I'll accept the consequences." Robert nodded, impressed by the girl's maturity. "All right, let's begin." They talked for an hour. Robert asked many questions: how Emily had met Ethan, about her own life story, why she cared so much for a boy she barely knew. Emily answered everything honestly, even when the questions hurt. "Last question," said Robert. "What do you want to say to the people who will read this article?" Emily thought for a moment. "I want to say every child deserves to be loved and cared for. It doesn't matter if they're rich or poor, disabled or not, if they have family or not. Every child deserves a chance." Robert felt a lump in his throat. In 20 years of journalism, he had rarely been so moved by an interview. "Thank you, Emily. The article will run tomorrow in the paper and online. I'll include information on how people can help." "What about Ethan's father? Will he be angry?" "Probably," Jennifer replied, "but sometimes people need to face the truth." They said their goodbyes, and Emily started walking back to her hiding spot. But she had only gone a few steps when she saw what she feared most: Michael Parker, the social worker, approaching with 2 city guards. "Emily Wilson," he shouted, "stop right there." Emily glanced around quickly. She was in an open square with few places to hide. But she wouldn't give up without a fight. She took off running. The chase lasted 15 minutes. Emily knew the downtown streets well, but the guards were faster and had radios. Eventually, they cornered her in a dead-end alley. "It's over." "Emily," Michael said, panting, "you're coming with us." "I didn't do anything wrong," she yelled, pressed against the alley wall. "You're a minor without a legal guardian. It's our duty to protect you." "You're not protecting me. You're stopping me from helping someone who needs it. That's not your responsibility. You're a child. Ethan is a child too, and he's alone." But Michael wasn't interested. In arguments. He signaled to the guards, who moved toward Emily. "Don't touch me," she screamed, but it was useless. She was just an 8-year-old girl against 3 adults. They took her away. Emily was placed in an official car and driven straight to the municipal shelter. The whole way she cried silently, thinking of Ethan and the promise she couldn't keep. The shelter was a grim, grey building full of children who, like her, had been abandoned or taken from their families. The director, Mrs. Matthews, was a stern woman who made it clear from the start that strict rules applied. "Emily, you'll be in room 12 with 3 other girls. Wake up is at 6, breakfast at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 6, and lights out at 9. No exceptions." What if I want to leave? You can't leave. Minors only go out with permission and supervision, and in your case, there's a special restriction to keep you from returning to the hospital. Emily felt her world collapse. How long? Until legal processes are complete, it could take months. Ethan would be alone for months, perhaps forever. That night in room 12, Emily cried until she had no tears left. The other girls tried to comfort her, but she was inconsolable. She had failed. She had broken her promise to Ethan. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Ethan stayed awake all night, waiting for Emily to show up. When dawn came and she didn't appear, he knew he had been abandoned once again. Jennifer arrived for her morning visit and found Ethan turned toward the wall, refusing to speak. "Ethan, I'm here to talk. I don't want to talk. I know you're sad because Emily didn't come yesterday. She left, just like everyone else. She didn't leave. She was forced to stay away, but not by choice." Ethan slowly turned around. "What happened?" Jennifer hesitated. She shouldn't tell a child about the situation, but Ethan deserved the truth. She was taken to a shelter. People think a girl like her shouldn't be taking care of other children. But she took good care of me. I know, and she still cares about you. So much that she risked her own freedom to try to help you. Ethan was silent for a long moment. "Will she come back?" "I don't know, but I know she hasn't forgotten you." "Dr. Jennifer." "Yes?" "Why is the world so cruel to those who want to help?" The question hit Jennifer like a punch. She had no answer to give the boy. The next morning, Robert Thompson's article was published. The headline read, "Street Girl Cares for Paralyzed Child Abandoned by Millionaire Father." The story made an immediate impact. The newspaper's website received thousands of visits, and social media exploded with comments of outrage and support. Within hours, people began organizing to help. But the first person to read the article was Richard Harrison, who nearly spit out his coffee when he saw the headline. His employees panicked when they saw their boss shouting in anger in the office. Richard immediately called the hospital. "I want to speak to the administration, now." Within 15 minutes, he was at the hospital, angrier than he had ever been in his life. "How could you let this happen?" he yelled at the hospital director. "My privacy has been violated. My family has been exposed. Mr. Harrison, we had no control over the situation. The report was done without our knowledge. And that doctor, Jennifer Williams, she was involved in this. We will look into the situation. I don't want an investigation. I want her fired, and I want the entire staff replaced, and I want my son transferred to another hospital today." The director tried to calm Richard down, but he was beside himself. The article had tarnished his reputation, exposed his personal life, and made him a public villain. Within hours, Richard hired a team of lawyers to sue the newspaper, the doctor, and anyone else who could be held accountable. He also hired a public relations firm to try to control the damage to his image, but the damage was already done. The story had touched the hearts of many, and in less than 24 hours, a spontaneous fundraising campaign had begun on social media. Jennifer arrived at the hospital the next morning and was immediately called to the director's office. "Dr. Williams," the director said gravely, "Mr. Harrison is demanding your immediate dismissal." "Why?" "For participating in the article that exposed his son's situation." "And you're going to fire me?" The director sighed. "Mr. Harrison is one of the hospital's biggest donors. His family contributes hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. I can't afford to lose him as a client." "I understand," Jennifer said calmly. "And Ethan, what happens to him?" "He'll be transferred to another hospital this afternoon." "To which hospital?" "We don't know yet. His father is deciding." Jennifer felt her blood boil. "You're allowing a child to be mistreated over financial matters. We're respecting the legal guardian's decisions. This is disgraceful." "Dr. Williams, you're fired. Gather your things and leave." Jennifer left the boardroom angry, but also with a strange sense of relief. She wouldn't have to be complicit in that situation any longer. She went straight to Ethan's room to say goodbye. "Ethan, I came to say goodbye." "Are you leaving too?" "I am, but I want you to know I won't forget you. And Emily won't either." "Where are they taking me?" "I don't know yet, But wherever it is, remember there are people who care about you." Ethan began to cry. "I don't want to go. I want to stay here and wait for Emily to come back." "Ethan, listen carefully. Emily risked everything to try and help you. That shows how much she cares. Don't give up, okay? One day you'll see each other again. Promise?" "I promise." But even as she made the promise, Jennifer had no idea how she could keep it. That afternoon, Richard arrived at the hospital with a private ambulance. Ethan was being transferred to a private clinic in another city, far away from all the chaos. When the nurses saw Ethan being carried out on the stretcher, some of them started crying. The boy had won the affection of many people during his months there. "Doctor," Ethan said to the nurse accompanying him, "if Emily comes looking for me, tell her I haven't forgotten her." The nurse nodded, eyes brimming with tears. Richard silently oversaw the transfer. He couldn't look at Ethan without feeling a whirlwind of conflicting emotions: anger, guilt, sadness, frustration, all tangled in an impossible knot. Ethan was taken to Riverside Medical Center, 2 hours away from the city. It was an expensive, discreet facility frequented by the local elite. There he would receive proper medical care, but would be completely isolated from the outside world. At the shelter, Emily learned about the transfer from one of the staff members who had read the news article. The news left her devastated. "Please, let me go visit him," she begged Mrs. Matthews. "Impossible, you're not allowed to leave." "Then at least let me call him." "We don't have authorization for that." Emily locked herself in the bathroom and cried until she was exhausted. Ethan had been taken far away, and she had no way to reach him. Her promise was completely broken, but what none of them knew was that the story was far from over. The spontaneous social media campaign was growing exponentially. People across the country were mobilizing, and the case had caught the attention of major organizations. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. A week after Ethan's transfer, a lawyer named Christine Miller read the article and decided to get involved. Christine specialized in child and adolescent rights and had seen many similar situations throughout her career. She called Robert Thompson, the journalist who had written the piece. "Robert, this is attorney Christine Miller. I read your report on Emily and Ethan and I'd like to help." "How exactly?" "I want to represent Emily legally. I also want to challenge the father's decisions regarding Ethan's treatment. Is that possible?" "It's complicated, but yes, there are legal precedents for questioning parental neglect in medical cases." Robert was intrigued. "What do you need?" First I need to speak with Emily. Then I need access to Ethan's medical records, and I need your help documenting the entire situation. Emily's in a shelter. I don't know if they'll let you talk to her." "They will. Every child has the right to legal representation." Christine wasn't lying. Within 2 days, she got permission to visit Emily at the shelter. The meeting took place in a small, windowless room with Mrs. Matthews observing everything. "Emily, I'm Christine, the lawyer. I came here to talk about your case and Ethan's. Can you get me out of here?" "I can try. But first, I need to understand the whole situation." Emily told her story again from the beginning. She talked about meeting Ethan, taking care of him, and the promise she made. Christine listened carefully, taking detailed notes. "Emily, would you like me to try to help Ethan legally?" "How?" "I can challenge his father's decisions in court. If I can prove he's being negligent, maybe the judge will order him to provide proper treatment." "Does that work?" "Sometimes, but it's a long and difficult process." "What about me? Can I leave here?" "I can try that too, but you'd need a legal guardian." Emily fell silent. She had no one in the world. "What about Dr. Jennifer?" she finally asked. "What do you mean?" "She helped me before." "Maybe she could be my guardian?" Christine thought for a moment. "That's an interesting idea. I'll talk to her." Christine sought out Jennifer the same day. The doctor had been unemployed since her dismissal and was considering moving to another city. "Dr. Jennifer, I'm Christine Miller, the lawyer. I came to talk about Emily and Ethan. How are they?" "Emily is at the shelter, and Ethan was transferred to a private clinic. But I'm trying to help them legally." Jennifer was immediately interested. "How?" Christine explained her legal strategy. She wanted to challenge Richard's parental negligence, arguing that denying proper medical treatment constituted abuse. She also wanted to secure temporary custody of Emily for someone trustworthy. "Would you be willing to take temporary responsibility for Emily?" Jennifer didn't hesitate. "Of course. I've always admired that girl's courage." "Are you sure it's a big responsibility?" "I am, and maybe together we can help Ethan too." Christine smiled. "That's exactly what I was thinking." The legal proceedings began immediately. Christine filed for temporary custody of Emily for Jennifer and also brought a case against Richard Harrison for medical neglect of his son. But Richard didn't sit still. As soon as he learned about the lawsuits, he hired the best legal team money could buy. The legal war had begun. Richard's lawyer, Dr. Andrew Peterson, was known for winning impossible cases. His strategy was to attack the credibility of everyone involved. "Your Honor," he said at the first hearing, "my client is a loving father making the best decisions for his son. The people questioning this are a doctor fired for misconduct, a street child with no formal education, and an opportunistic lawyer looking for media attention." Christine countered immediately. "Your Honor, we're talking about a child being denied essential medical treatment because of his father's whims. Mr. Richard Harrison has the means to provide the best care for his son, but chooses not to. That's clear negligence." The Judge Frank Sullivan reviewed the documents silently. It was a complicated case, pitting parental rights against a child's welfare. "I'll review all the documents and make my decision in a week," he finally said. A week that felt like an eternity for everyone involved. Emily was allowed to stay with Jennifer during the process, under social services supervision. It was the first time in months she felt truly safe. "Dr. Jennifer," she said on her first night at the doctor's house, "do you think we can help Ethan? I don't know Emily, but I know we'll try with everything we've got. And if we can't, then at least we'll know we did everything we could." Emily nodded, but inside she was terrified of failing again. Meanwhile, at Riverside Medical Center, Ethan was wasting away. The environment was sterile and cold, the staff professional but distant, and he had no contact with the outside world. He spent his days staring out the window, hoping by some miracle Emily would appear. But days turned into weeks, and she never came. Richard visited Ethan once a week, always brief, always tense. The visits were awkward for both of them. "How are you, son?" "I'm okay, Dad." "Are the doctors taking good care of you?" "They are." "Do you need anything?" "Emily." Richard sighed every time Ethan mentioned Emily. "Ethan, you need to forget that girl. She's not part of your life anymore." "But she cared about me." "I care about you too." "Then why don't you want me to get better?" The question always left Richard speechless. He left the visits feeling worse than when he arrived. The truth was, Richard no longer knew how to handle his own feelings. The guilt over the accident, the pain of losing his wife, the frustration with Ethan's condition, it had all become an emotional barrier he couldn't break through. He knew he was being unfair to his son, but he couldn't stop. It was like being trapped in a downward spiral with no way out. Around that time, Richard started receiving strange calls. People who had read the article called his office, sent emails and posted comments on the company's social media. Most were filled with criticism and outrage. How can a father abandon his own son? You should be ashamed of denying a child treatment. Emily is worth more than you. The comments infuriated him, but they also planted seeds of doubt. Was he really in the wrong? One night, alone in his office, Richard found himself researching the treatment Jennifer had recommended for Ethan. He discovered the chances of improvement were actually significant, far greater than the previous doctors had indicated. Why had he refused so categorically? The answer hit him like a punch to the gut, because if Ethan got better, he'd have to face his own guilt. It was easier to accept that his son was lost forever than to confront the possibility of recovery. The realization left him disgusted with himself. The following week, the judge issued his decision. Emily could remain under Jennifer's temporary custody, but the case against Richard was dismissed. A father has the legal right to make medical decisions for his minor child, the judge explained. While I may morally disagree with his choice, I cannot force him to accept a specific treatment. Christine was devastated, but refused to give up. We'll appeal, she told Emily and Jennifer. There's legal precedent for cases of parental medical neglect. Emily didn't understand all the legal terms, but she grasped the essential part. They had lost, at least for now. That night, she locked herself in her room and cried as she hadn't since being taken by the social worker. She had failed Ethan again. Jennifer tried to comfort her, but there was little she could say. The legal defeat had been a hard blow, for all of them. But fate has a strange way of working. Sometimes when all seems lost, an unexpected opportunity arises. 2 weeks after the court's decision, Richard received a call that would change everything. Mr. Harrison, this is Dr. Patricia Reynolds from Riverside Medical Center. I'm calling about your son, Ethan. Is something wrong? Well, sir, Ethan isn't responding well to isolation. He's refusing to eat, barely speaking, and showing signs of severe depression. Richard felt his stomach drop. What does this mean? It means he's wasting away, sir. Children need emotional stimulation to develop, especially children who've been through trauma. And what do you recommend? Honestly, I recommend he has contact with people who care about him, more frequent family visits, maybe some friends. He doesn't have any friends. Sir, according to the reports I received from the previous hospital, there was a girl who used to visit him and had a very positive influence on his emotional state. Richard clenched his fists. Even far away, Emily was still interfering in his life. That girl is no longer part of my son's life. I understand, sir, but I must warn you that if Ethan continues in this state, there could be serious complications. Childhood depression can affect the immune system, physical development, even the will to live. The doctor's words echoed in Richard's head for the rest of the day. The will to live. Was Ethan losing his will to live? That night, for the first time in months, Richard visited his son outside the usual hours. He arrived at the medical center at 8 in the evening and found Ethan awake, staring at the ceiling with an empty expression. "Hi, son." Ethan turned his head and looked at his father without emotion. "Hi, Dad. How are you?" "Same as always." Richard approached the bed and really looked at Ethan for the first time in a long while. What he saw shocked him. The boy was much thinner, pale, with deep dark circles under his eyes. He looked like a ghostly version of the son he knew. "Ethan, you're not well." "I'm fine." "You're not. You're too thin. Aren't you eating?" Ethan shrugged. "I'm not hungry." "Why? Thai food doesn't taste good when you're sad." The simplicity of the answer struck Richard like an arrow. His son was sad, deeply sad. "Why are you sad?" "Because no one really cares about me. I care about you." Ethan looked at him with lifeless eyes. "If you cared, you wouldn't have taken me away from the hospital where Emily could visit me." "Ethan, that girl, don't talk bad about Emily." For the first time in weeks, Ethan showed emotion. "She really cared about me. She fed me, told me stories, made me laugh, and you took her away from me." Richard fell silent, shocked by the intensity of his son's feelings. "I want Emily back," Ethan continued, tears in his eyes. "I want to get out of this bed and play with her. I want to be normal again, but you won't let me." "Ethan, you'd rather I stay useless forever. That way you don't have to feel guilty about crashing the car." Ethan's words were like a slap to Richard's face. His 5-year-old son had understood something he couldn't even admit to himself. "That's not it, son." "Yes, it is. You're ashamed of me. That's why you hide me in this place." Richard felt tears burning his eyes. He couldn't lie anymore. Not to Ethan, not to himself. "I'm ashamed of myself, not you." Ethan stopped crying and looked at his father, curiously. "What do you mean?" "I was driving the car the day of the accident. It was my fault you ended up like this. It was my fault your mother left, and I can't look at you without remembering that." Ethan was silent for a long moment. "Dad, I don't blame you for the accident." "You don't?" "No. Accidents happen. Emily explained that to me." Richard felt something break inside him, a barrier he had carefully built over the months. "Emily is a very smart girl." "Yeah, and she really loves me. Not like you, who pretends to love me but doesn't want me to get better." The accusation was brutal but true. Richard realized he had been sabotaging his son's chances of recovery because of his own guilt. "Ethan, if I bring Emily to visit, will you try to eat better?" Ethan's eyes lit up for the first time in weeks. "Really? Really? And the treatment the doctor mentioned? So I can walk again?" Richard hesitated. Giving Ethan hope meant admitting he'd been wrong all this time. "I'll think about it." "Promise you'll really think about it?" "I promise." Ethan smiled, and Richard realized how much he'd missed that smile. "Daddy?" "Yes?" "I love you. Even when you do wrong things." Richard could no longer hold back his tears. He hugged his son for the first time since the accident and cried as he hadn't since the day he lost his wife. "I love you too, Ethan. And I'm so sorry for being such a bad father." "You weren't a bad father, just a scared one." The wisdom of the 5-year-old was overwhelming. Richard promised himself things would change. The next day, Richard called Christine Miller. "Dr. Christine, this is Richard Harrison." Christine nearly dropped the phone. "Mr. Harrison, how can I help you?" "I'd like to talk about my son and about the girl, Emily. Are you willing to reconsider the treatment?" "I'm willing to talk about everything." Christine scheduled a meeting for the following day. Richard arrived on time, but visibly nervous. "Mr. Harrison, what made you change your mind?" "My son is dying inside, and I realized I'm the one killing him. Can you explain further?" Richard recounted his conversation with Ethan, acknowledging his own guilt and understanding he'd been projecting his fears onto his son. "I want Ethan to have the treatment he deserves, and I want Emily to be able to visit him. What if the treatment works, if Ethan improves? Then I'll have to learn how to be a real father." Christine was moved by Richard's sincerity. "I can arrange a meeting between you, Emily, and Dr. Jennifer. We can discuss how to proceed. I'd like that." The meeting was set for the next afternoon at Jennifer's home. Emily was beyond nervous. It would be her first time meeting Ethan's father, the man who'd caused the boy so much pain. When Richard arrived, Emily eyed him with suspicion. "You're the father who abandoned Ethan." "I am," Richard replied simply, "and I'm here to try and fix that." "How?" "First, by approving the treatment he needs. Second, by allowing you to visit him." Emily couldn't hide her surprise. "Why? Before you didn't want that." "Because my son was right. I was afraid he'd get better, because it would mean admitting I could have helped sooner. And now? Now I want to do what's best for him, even if it's hard for me." Jennifer intervened. "Mr. Harrison, the treatment I recommended is still viable. Ethan is young and has a good chance of significant recovery. How much does it cost?" "Between $80,000 and $100,000, spread over 2 years. It's approved. Even knowing it might not fully work. Even knowing it might fully work, Ethan deserves that chance." Emily looked at Richard differently now. There was still suspicion, but also a glimmer of hope. "Can I visit him tomorrow?" "You can. In fact, I'd like you both to come with me. I want to see Ethan's reaction when he sees you." "And after? Can I keep visiting?" "You can. And more than that. I'd like you both to help me become a better father." Jennifer smiled. "How so?" "You two know Ethan in a way I don't. You know how to make him happy. I need to learn that." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. I don't want to be the kind of father who only shows up to sign papers. I want to be the father Ethan deserves." Emily finally smiled. "Ethan will be so happy." "I hope so. I have a lot to make up to him." The next morning, the three of them made the trip to Riverside Medical Center. Emily was too anxious to sit still the whole way. "What if he's mad at me for taking so long?" "He won't be," Jennifer assured. "Children forgive easily when they know they've been loved. What if he doesn't remember me?" "It's impossible for anyone to forget you, Emily," said Richard. "Ethan talks about you every day." When they arrived at the medical center, Richard asked Emily to enter the room first. "I want to see his reaction." Emily opened the door slowly and peeked inside. Ethan was lying on his side, gazing out the window. She tiptoed closer and whispered, "Hi, Ethan." Ethan turned quickly, and when he saw Emily, his face lit up like the sunrise. "Emily!" he shouted, stretching out his arms. "You came back. You really came back." Emily rushed to the bed and hugged Ethan as if she'd never let go. "Of course I came back. I promised I'd never leave you, remember? But you took so long." "I know, but I'm here now and I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" "I promise." Richard, watching from the doorway, felt his heart tighten. Ethan's joy was so pure, so overwhelming, that he realized just how much he'd deprived his son of that feeling. Jennifer approached the bed. "Hi, Ethan. Remember me?" "Dr. Jennifer." "Did you all come together?" "We did, and we have some very good news for you." "What is it?" Richard stepped closer to the bed. "Ethan, I've decided to approve the treatment Dr. Jennifer recommended." Ethan looked at his father, confused. "The treatment so I can walk again?" "Yes." Ethan fell silent for a moment, as if he couldn't believe it. "Really? Really? And can Emily stay with me during the treatment?" "She can." Ethan began to cry, but this time they were tears of joy. "I'll be able to play with Emily again?" "You'll be able to play, run, do whatever you want." "Emily!" Ethan grabbed the girl's hand. "We'll be able to chase kites like in my dream." "Yes, we will," Emily replied, also crying. "And I'll be with you every step of the way." "Dad," Ethan said, looking at Richard, "thank you for letting Emily come back." "Actually, I'm the one who should be thanking you. Emily helped me understand what it means to be a real father." "How?" "She showed me that loving someone means wanting what's best for them, even when it's hard for us." Ethan smiled. "Emily is really smart." "She is, and from now on we're going to be a real family. You, me, and Emily." Emily looked at Richard in surprise. "What do you mean?" "Well, if Dr. Jennifer agrees, I'd like to officially adopt you. That way you'd really be Ethan's sister." Emily was speechless. She had never imagined she'd have a real family one day. You want to adopt me?" "I do, if you want me to." "And can I keep taking care of Ethan?" "You can? In fact, I need you to teach me how to do it." Emily looked at Ethan, who was beaming, then at Jennifer, who was smiling, and finally at Richard. "Yes," she said at last. "I want that." And so in that hospital room, an unlikely family was formed. A father who learned to love beyond his guilt, a street girl who found a home, and a boy who regained his hope. Ethan's treatment began the following week. It was 2 years of intense physical therapy, delicate surgeries, moments of progress and moments of frustration. But Emily was there every step of the way, encouraging Ethan on the hard days and celebrating every small victory. Richard also changed completely. He reduced his workload to spend more time with his children, learned to show affection, and discovered how to be a present father. It wasn't easy, but with each passing day, it felt more natural. Jennifer became Ethan's personal physician and a close friend of the family. Watching the boy's recovery and the transformation of everyone involved was one of the most rewarding experiences of her career. The first step Ethan took happened 1.5 years after the treatment began. It was a Saturday morning, and the family was in the physical therapy room when Ethan, supported by the parallel bars, managed to take 3 consecutive steps. Emily shouted with joy, Richard cried with emotion, and Jennifer recorded everything on her phone. "I did it!" Ethan yelled. "Emily, I can walk! Yes, you did!" Emily ran to hug him. "You're the bravest boy in the world. We can chase kites together now." "Yes, we can. And we'll do so many things together." 6 months later, Ethan was walking without support. Not perfectly, he still had some limitations, but he could move, play, and live like a normal child. The first time he and Emily ran together in the park was a magical moment. Richard watched them from the bench, his heart full of gratitude for having learned to be a real father. "Daddy!" Ethan shouted, running toward his father. "Look!" "How fast I can run." "I see, champ. I'm so proud of you." "And of Emily too? She helped me not give up. Especially Emily. She saved our family." Emily came running after Ethan, breathless but happy. "Dad," she said, still getting used to calling Richard that, "can I take Ethan to see the ducks at the lake?" "Of course, sweetheart. But be careful." "We will." As the children ran toward the lake, Richard reflected on everything that had happened. 2 years ago, he was a bitter man consumed by guilt who had abandoned his own son. Now he was the father of 2 wonderful children and had learned that family isn't defined just by blood, but by love and care. Emily had come into their lives like an angel disguised as a street kid. She hadn't just saved Ethan, she'd saved all of them. That evening when they got home, Richard made a suggestion. How about we take a family trip? We could go to the beach, the mountains, or anywhere you'd like. Can I choose? Emily asked. Of course. I want to go to the place where we first met. The hospital? Yes, I want to show the kids there now that there's always hope. Richard smiled. Even after everything she'd been through, Emily still thought of others first. That's a wonderful idea, and so they did. The following weekend, the family visited Mercy General Hospital. Ethan, walking on his own, handed out toys and books to the children there. Emily told her story to anyone who would listen, always emphasizing that we should never give up on the people we love. Jennifer, who had returned to work at the hospital, was moved to see her 3 friends spreading joy through the halls. You've become such a beautiful family, she told Richard, all thanks to the courage of an 8-year-old girl who refused to let a child be alone. Emily has always been special. Yes, and now she has the family she always deserved. When they got home that night, Emily asked a question she'd held on to for a long time. Dad, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. Why did you change your mind about me and Ethan? Richard thought before answering. Because Ethan made me realize I was being selfish. I was so wrapped up in my own pain that I forgot he was suffering too. And you showed me what it means to truly love someone. How did I do that? You risked everything for someone you barely knew. That's real love. And it made me want to be worthy of being your father. You are worthy, Emily said. You just needed to learn to forgive yourself. And you taught me that too. Ethan, who had been listening, came closer. Dad, is Emily staying with us forever? Forever, Richard confirmed. We're a family now. And families never abandon each other, right? Never, Emily and Richard said at the same time. 5 years later, Ethan was 10 years, old and walking perfectly. She played soccer, rode her bike, and lived like any normal child. Emily, now 13, was a determined teenager who dreamed of becoming a doctor like Jennifer. Richard had become one of the leading supporters of campaigns to help children with disabilities in the city. His company created a medical assistance program for underprivileged families, always remembering that it was a street girl who taught him the true meaning of family. Jennifer continued to be the children's doctor and a friend to the family. Watching Ethan grow up healthy and Emily blossom into a brilliant young woman was her greatest professional achievement. One Sunday afternoon, the family was gathered in the living room when Emily made an announcement. I've decided what I want to do when I grow up. What? Richard and Ethan asked at the same time. I want to be a doctor and work with children who don't have families. I want to give them the same chance you gave me. Richard smiled proudly. That's a beautiful choice, sweetheart. And I'll help, said Ethan. When I grow up, I'll work with you. How? I don't know yet. But I'll find a way to help kids like we used to be. Richard watched his 2 children planning how to make the world better and felt his heart swell with pride. That street girl who had come into their lives hadn't just saved Ethan, she had taught them that true wealth lies in caring for one another. You know what we're going to do? He said. We'll start a project this year. We can create a space at Mercy General Hospital where children who are hospitalized receive not just medical care, but also love and attention. Really? Emily's eyes shone. Really? And both of you will help me plan everything. What will we call the project? Ethan asked. Emily thought for a moment. The Hope Project, because that's what you gave me when I needed it most. Perfect, Richard agreed. The Hope Project. So no child ever feels abandoned. And so, from that chance meeting, between a street girl and a paralyzed boy, not just a family was born, but also a movement of love and care that would touch the lives of hundreds of other children in the years to come. Emily never forgot the promise she made to Ethan that first day at the hospital. She promised she would never abandon him, and she kept her word. But more than that, She discovered that sometimes, when we care for someone, we end up saving ourselves, too. Richard learned that being a father isn't about giving money or ensuring material security. It's about being present, showing love, and accepting that sometimes the most unlikely people can teach us life's most important lessons. Ethan grew up knowing he was loved by people who chose to love him, not just out of family obligation. That made him a confident, affectionate child, determined to give back the love he had received. And Jennifer found that sometimes the most powerful medicine doesn't come from drugs or surgeries, but from genuine human connection. When Emily turned 18, the family threw a special party. During his speech, Richard made a revelation that moved everyone. "Emily, when you came into our lives, I thought you were just a girl trying to help Ethan. Now I know you were an angel God sent to save our entire family." "Dad, don't say that," Emily blushed. "I just did what anyone would do." "No, sweetheart. You did what only special people do. You loved when it was easier to ignore. You persisted when it was easier to give up. You forgave when it was easier to hold a grudge." Ethan, now 15 and almost as tall as his father, stood up. "Emily, I want you to know you're the best sister anyone could have. You saved me when I was lost, and I'll never forget that." "You saved me too," Emily replied, tears in her eyes. "You gave me a family, a home, a future. I'm the one who should be thanking you." Jennifer, who was present at the party, stepped up to the microphone. "If I may, I'd like to say something. In 20 years of medicine, I've never seen a purer demonstration of love than Emily's for Ethan. She taught me that caring is so much more than prescribing medicine. It's about giving hope, kindness, and presence. Emily, you're going to be an extraordinary doctor. Thank you, Dr. Jennifer, for everything." That night, after all the guests had left, the family gathered in the living room as they did every Sunday. "Dad," said Emily, "can I ask you something?" "Always, sweetheart." "Do you still feel guilty about the accident?" Richard thought before answering. "Sometimes. But I've learned that guilt is only useful if it teaches us something. The accident taught me to cherish every moment I have with you all. And Ethan's treatment. Do you regret resisting it for so long?" "I regret it deeply, but I also know that if I hadn't resisted, I might never have met you, and our family wouldn't be complete without you." Ethan, who was playing video games, paused the game. "You know what's funny? Sometimes I'm glad the accident happened." "What do you mean?" asked Emily, surprised. "Because if it hadn't happened, I'd never have met you, and you're the best thing that's ever happened to me." "Ethan, it's true. I'd rather have a sister like you and legs that work a little less than have perfect legs and not have you." Emily stood up and hugged her brother. "You're also the best thing that's ever happened to me." "What about me?" Richard teased. "Don't I count?" "You too, Dad." They both laughed at the same time. Richard watched his children embrace and felt immense gratitude. His family had been born from pain but had grown in love, and that made it all the more special. Years later, when Emily graduated from medical school, Ethan was in the front row, cheering louder than anyone. Richard cried with pride, remembering the street girl who once hid in the halls of a hospital to feed an abandoned child. During the graduation speech, Emily was invited to speak as the class representative. "I learned many things about medicine in school," she said into the microphone. "But the most important lesson about caring for people I learned when I was 8 years old, meeting a 5-year-old boy alone in a hospital room." She told Ethan's story, how they met, how caring for him taught her about true love. "Medicine treats illnesses," she continued, "but sometimes the healing people need most is knowing someone cares about them. That's what I want to bring to my career. The certainty that none of my patients will ever feel alone." The entire auditorium stood to applaud. Ethan was crying with emotion, and Richard felt like the proudest father in the world. After graduation, Emily was hired by Mercy General Hospital, the very place where it all began. Her first day of work was emotional for the whole family. "Nervous?" Ethan asked as he walked her to the hospital entrance. "A little, but excited too. You're going to be the best doctor this hospital has ever had. Thank you for believing in me." "I'll always believe in you." "You're my hero sister." Emily entered the hospital and went straight to the 7th floor where it had all started. The room where she'd met Ethan now held another child, a 6-year-old girl who had arrived the night before. Emily knocked and entered. "Hi, my name is Dr. Emily. I'm here to see how you're doing." The girl looked at her skeptically. "Are you really a doctor? You look too young." "I am a doctor, and you know what? When I was your age, I spent time in this hospital too. As a patient. As a visitor to a very special friend. Want me to tell you the story?" The girl nodded, intrigued. And so Emily began to tell once again the story of how she met Ethan, of how love can transform lives, of how we should never give up on the people who matter to us. As she spoke, she realized she had found her purpose in life, to keep spreading the love she had learned in those hallways, one child at a time. At the end of the day, when she got home, Ethan and Richard were waiting to hear about her first day. "How was it?" they asked at the same time. "It was perfect," Emily replied. "I met a girl who reminded me so much of myself when I was little. I think we're going to be great friends." "Are you adopting someone else already?" Richard teased. "It's not exactly adoption, it's just caring. Like someone once cared for me." Ethan smiled. "Is the family growing again?" The family always grows when there's enough love for more people. And so the story that had begun with a street girl feeding a paralyzed boy turned into an endless cycle of love and care, touching the lives of countless people over the years. Because sometimes the most beautiful miracles happen when someone simply decides that another person deserves to be loved. The end of the story. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, what a touching story, isn't it? Emily's courage teaches us that true love knows no age, social class, or circumstances. Do you believe small acts of kindness can change lives forever? Tell us in the comments which part moved you the most and if you've ever witnessed a similar situation. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other stories that go straight to the heart.